everybody. Hope everybody's doing great out there tonight. My bad, I just accidentally hit the go live button already, but that's okay. All right, so let's get into it. So I'm gonna kind of just stick strictly to scripture tonight. I just got a couple things I want to read real quick, if you don't mind. Hope everybody's doing great. God bless you. And we just need to all accept, man. We are in the times, and Jesus is the only hope. He's the only way. He's the only truth. And he's the only way to get that life of, eternal, you know, just, it's awesome what the Bible speaks of, what happens, when Jesus, we see the coming of the Son of Man, you know what I mean? And it's going to be good for some, it's going to be bad for others, and it's just that, but as long as we keep our faith in Christ, we're going to be all right. So I'm just going to kind of, get to it. So, hang on, let me grab my Bible too. Because I got it written down in the easiest form on the paper here. But, yeah, man. Kind of helps me because I really enjoy the King James Version. But I just like to have the, contemporary edition. And that's what we're going to be reading from mostly, what I got wrote down by hand here in my notebook. Took me years to get this all done, man. I stay up writing scriptures, and one point I was like, man, I don't understand, really what I was doing. But this would have led to here. Oh yeah, we grabbed one. Once again, I hope everybody's doing great. Hope you've had a wonderful day. I got one more kid to get to sleep, and we'll be good to go. My 2-year-old is. Oh my goodness, man. We're having to swap it up. My wife does it one night, I do another night. Nope. Okay. So, if you want to turn with me to, you can go to Matthew chapter 24. And that's pretty much where we're going to probably be at. I doubt we'll get much further than that. But, anyways, after Jesus left the temple, his disciples came over and said to him that, they said, look at all these buildings, right? And Jesus replied, he's like, do you see all these buildings? They will certainly be torn down and not one stone be left in place. You know what I mean? And you imagine how, how big Jerusalem was at this point, especially amongst, all his disciples, what they knew about it, because they all grew up, and he said, later, as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him in private, and they asked, when will we see this happen? When will be the sign of your coming and the end of the world, right? So, Jesus answered them. He said, don't let anyone fool you. Many will come and claim to be me. They will say that they are the Messiah, and they will fool many people. You will soon hear of wars and threats of wars. But don't be afraid. These things will have to happen first. And they did. It all played out, man. And everything he says here, man, it's in dead line of what happened the last 2,000 years. And he said, nations and kingdoms will go to war against each other. People will starve to death. And in some places, there will be earthquakes. But this is just the beginning of troubles. And we all know about these cosmic disturbances, you know what I mean? The sixth seal, the fourth trumpet, And, let's see here. He said, but this is just the beginning of troubles, of sorrows, man. This is the beginning, he said. He said, you will be arrested, punished, and even killed because of me. You will be hated by people of all nations, and they said the martyrs are right there, like urging God to let's end it. You know what I mean? Like, how many more do we gotta, suffer? You know what I mean? And I think that's in chapter 6 of the book of Revelation. Let's see here. It says, Because of me, you will be hated by all nations. Many will give up and will betray and hate each other. And it was illegal to be a Christian up to 300, almost 300 years after Christ's death. And, Constantine, had a lot to do with that. But he said, many false prophets will come and fool a lot of people. Evil will spread and cause many people to stop loving each other. But if you keep on being faithful right unto the end, you will be saved. Just look at Christianity, for example, man. The Catholics, Protestants, the split of the church, you know what I mean? When all that went down. And let's see here. He said, but if you keep on being faithful right to the end, you will be saved. He said, when the good news about the kingdom has been preached all over the world and told to all nations, the end will come. And I'm trying to say, dude, we have an internet that goes completely around the world. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like, dude. And, there were some people that was, making copies of the Bible. They said that they would have the gospel all the way around the world. I can't remember if it was a couple, it had been, I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago that they thought that would have happened. And it might have been less than that. I really can't, I don't remember. But it said, because he said right after that, the end will come. He said, someday you will see that horrible thing in the holy place, just as the prophet Daniel said. Everyone who reads this must try to understand. So he's urging you. Hey, what's going on out there, duos? And he's urging you. He said, and who reads this must try to understand. You know what I mean? And they think, a lot of it goes back to the destruction of the temple where they, sacrificed the pig to Zeus and there's many other times they speak of, where they got this planned out, and I got my own theories on it. But he says, if you are living in Judea at that time, run to the mountains. You know what else gets me? That even Jesus says in the end times, and all these people running to Jerusalem, and Judea to go, preach the gospel. He did say, before it got, you preached all the, places over there, it'd come to the end too. He also said it somewhere. And he said that if you are living in Judea at that time, run to the mountains. If you are on the roof, and what's over there right now? And who has controlled Jerusalem for, more years than even the Jewish people have? The Muslims. And what do to Christians? They even teach that, that Jesus is going to come back and crush the cross, and he's going to do something to the people who believe in all that. I can't remember exactly all the, Islamic theology, because I really didn't, care to study it like a lot of people did. You know what I mean? It's just, I know what they, the eschatology, the end times, but other than that, man, I really didn't care to learn their theology. After they didn't believe that Jesus died on the cross for their sins, I didn't really care much for it, what I mean? And I had people all the time telling me, oh, man, you need to try the Quran. You need to read the Quran. I'm like, no, I want to finish the Bible first because, obviously God gave it to me first instead of giving me the Quran, 3.5, 4 years ago when I first got born again Christian. So he says that, he said, if you were living in Judea at that time, run, he says, to the mountains. If you're on the roof of your house, don't go inside to get anything. If you are out in the field, don't go back to get your coat. It will be a terrible time for women who are expecting babies or nursing young children. And every time I think about that, dude, I think about the abortion. You know what I mean? And, how, just children and widows and, and Not even just, just women in general, having babies. Last century, man. Last 1,000 years for even saying, man. Man, dude, the world is cruel, man. You know what I'm saying? But he said, and pray that you won't have to escape in the winter or on a Sabbath. So, he said this will be the worst time of suffering since the beginning of the world. And nothing this terrible will ever happen again. So obviously, Jesus is already speaking about the days of Noah when God destroyed the world with the flood, right? He says, if God doesn't make the time shorter, no one will be left alive, but because of God's chosen ones, the witnesses, he will make the time shorter. In the church, people spreading the gospel, right? The chosen, you know what I mean? The ones that's raptured, right? I still believe that Jesus said that in John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Said, I am going to prepare a place for you. He said, believe in God, believe also in me. He said, in my Father's house there are many mansions, many rooms. You know what I mean? He said he was going to prepare a place for us. He was going to come back, receive us into himself, and take us back. And we understand, that will take place. Then Armageddon happened, the millennium, and then, you got, when the new world, right? After the, Jesus reigns for 1,000 years, lets the devil out, or you know what I mean? But anyways, he said, someone may say, here's the Messiah, or there he is. Don't believe it. False messiahs and false prophets will work great miracles. He said, man, they will even try to fool God's chosen ones. He said, but I have warned you ahead of time. And I heard, what's his name? He's a big Christian content creator. I can't even think of his name right now, but he did a video talking about this, that were, there was people claiming that, they found Jesus' body somewhere. I can't remember what they said. Some crazy stuff. Realism, I'm sure y'all know what I'm talking about. But he said, Jesus did. He said, if you were told the Messiah is out in the desert, do not go. And if you were told he is in some secret place, don't believe it. The coming of the Son of Man will be like lightning that can be seen from the east to the west. He says, where there's a corpse, there will always be vultures. And to me, this is people, these are the people that's hawking the old people for the inheritance. I don't know, I've always felt that way. It's like a sign that in the end times, people will be harking to inheritance like vultures, circling corpses, you know what I mean? And it says, right after those days of suffering, the sun will become dark, the moon will no longer shine. And what does that sound like? I think that's the sixth seal and through the sixth trumpet, right? He said, the sun will become dark, the moon will no longer shine. And technically by science now, the moon don't shine. And I'm telling you, dude, it's been so crazy here lately, dude. We'll have a moon for a long time. It's full moon tonight. And then all of a sudden, the moon will be gone for almost 2 weeks. Never seen that in my whole life, or maybe I just never noticed it. But anyway, he says, and Derek Prince said when Jesus was saying here, the stars will fall and the powers in the sky will be shaking. Like the angels will be falling, just like in the days of Noah. You know what I'm saying? And intermixing with man. I'm just trying to tell you, dude, just technology itself is just, crazy. But anyways, he said, then a sign will appear in the sky. And what did it say in 1 Thessalonians? That they will be, they will meet him in the air. You know what I'm saying? The dead will rise first, and those left, those that are still alive will raise up with them, you know what I mean? And meet the Lord in the sky. in their transformed body. Like, man, it'd be like this incredible transformation and like, that's, I can't remember, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And he said, and there will be the Son of Man. All nations on earth will weep when they see the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. The world will weep. He's talking about this time. You know what I mean? Just like we've always heard. You know how, I'm telling you, man, it's going to be so sad when the church vanishes. You know what I mean? Jesus' people vanish, right? And all these people, are just left here, dude. I'm telling you, man, I got some crazy ideas about, what happens after that, man. There's all these different theologies. I'm telling you, dude, I don't think it's as easy, what people think, a lot of it, man. You know what I mean? I think a lot of it's just, people trying to put it together like a puzzle, but it's prophecy, man. You know what I mean? You got to read from the Old Testament, the New Testament. You know what I mean? It's just like, it is kind of like a puzzle, but it's like one that, I don't know, it's wild, man, ever since I've been studying the book of Revelation. But anyway, he says that at the sound of a loud trumpet, he will send his angels to bring his chosen ones together. What did he say with them 4 angels and the 4 winds? They would bring his people in, man. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. It goes back to the weeds in the wheat field, right? He said, learn a lesson from a fig tree. That he says the same thing to the Pharisees about how they didn't know the Messiah was coming. That they didn't recognize the Messiah. He's like, man, you can look at the sky and tell when it's going to rain. You can look at the trees and tell that fall is coming. But you can't look in front of you and see that the Messiah was there, right? Hey, what's going on out there? Appreciate the comment, bro. And he said that learn a lesson from a fig tree. Now, he's telling the disciples this. He said, learn a lesson from a fig tree, right? When its branches sprout and starts putting out leaves, you know that summer is near. So when you see all these things happening, you will know the time has almost come. I can promise you, Jesus said, that some of the people of this generation will still be alive when all this happens. The sky and the earth won't last forever, but my words will. And I'm trying to tell you, dude, they've tried to destroy the word of God. I don't know how often. And like I said, a lot of people don't know it, but it was illegal to be a Christian to almost 300 years after Jesus was dead. Or after he raised from the dead, you know what I mean, on the 3rd day. And after, they said he walked the earth for, was it 40? I know they said over 40 days or something, over 500 people seen him alive, dude. And I'm just trying to say that, I guess one reason why I get on here, a lot of people do it for, I feel like public opinion, of them. And, but dude, Jesus really put this on me, man. I done this for like 3 years, almost 4 years now. And everybody said off of it. And I just felt like God wanted me just at first just to read what Jesus said. That's all I did for like years, man, was just, I wrote down what Jesus said in the easiest form and I just started reading it online, man. And it was like, my 3rd year, I started getting on the book of Revelation and I've been in ever since then. I'm almost on my 4th year of being a born again Christian and best years of my life. But anyways, he says that no one knows the day or hour. The angels in heaven don't know. And we all know this classic line because we know what all these people be quoting when people predict the rapture. He said, and the Son himself doesn't know, only the Father knows. But see, well, people don't understand that, that no one knows the day or hour, right? Absolutely not. Jesus said that. I believe that, 100%. But see, what gets me is, though, there is a day in Jewish culture, the new year, right? And I believe that's why a lot of people's always thought that throughout the years. They think it's going to be around a certain time. If you look up, most of the time when people thought the rapture was going to happen, it was always, kind of more on this side of the year. You know what I mean? Well, see, when the Jewish New Year's takes place, like I can't remember what all is going to happen in the sky, but they don't know. It's known as the day and hour no one knows. You know what I mean? Is the Jewish New Year. You know what I mean? Because something's got to happen in the sky for it to happen, right? So he said, only the Father knows. And he says, when the Son of Man appears, things will be just as they were when Noah lived. And a lot of people just want to think that he's just claiming. And I got a book that they teach in Bible colleges, right? That when they broke this down, when all these, I guess doctors, whatever you want to call them, these scholars, right? He is speaking of like it's going to be exactly as it was in Noah's time. Not that it was just that they weren't paying attention and then it happened. You know what I mean? And look how it was. I mean, man, what was bad was considered good, and what was good was considered bad. And even Jesus talks about in the beginning of this that only once it's ever been this terrible since the beginning of the world. Because the way I understand, right, there was 2,000 years, then the flood. Then you got the 2,000 years, Jesus came, and then you got now 2,000 years, right? Is what they think, Bible theologians and, theology, I believe. And he said, but I believe that also, though, people ain't going to be paying attention, man. You know what I mean? It's going to take certain things to wake these people up. And I'm trying to tell you that there's a lot of people out here, it's not just me, are saying the same things, man. God is laying this on a lot of people's heart, but do I believe a lot of people do it for publicity and, impressing others and stuff? Yes, but a lot of people, man, they ain't never made a dime off this stuff, and they do it every night, every day. It's because of what they truly believe, and I'm telling you, just like God came to me, you know what I mean, and laid this on me, he has others. I'm just trying to say, dude, it's not something that you can get inside of a building. You know what I mean? It's not something that some, man, preaching or, this guy claims he's a prophet. No, man. It's about a relationship with God that can only, happen through accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. You know what I mean? And, dude, I'm telling you, man, been the best 4 years of my life, dude. You know what I mean? And honestly, I just, probably one thing I dwell on the most is my time before I was a Christian, you know what I mean? And born again Christian, I just wish I could have told so many more people, man, And at this point, I've been a Christian for almost 4 years. I've been on the internet, I don't know how long, and I bet I've told at least around 350,000 people about Jesus, But anyways, he said that they didn't know anything was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. Just like, the 5 virgins, right? The 5 had them, or excuse me, the 10. 5 had enough oil and 5 didn't. You know what I mean? You almost wonder if that's the way it's going to be when it all happens, man, you know what I mean? And it's going to be terrible for the people who were faking, being Christian, and the people that was, just, that was keeping people out, man. You know what I mean? Not being more acceptance, not, even Jesus said even the smallest, that you think is, his people, is considered the greatest in his kingdom, man. You know what I mean? He said a servant will be the rest his master, you know what I mean? So, he said, this is how it will be when the Son of Man appears. Just like it was in Noah's day, right? He said 2 men will be in the same field. One will be taken, one will be left. 2 women will be grinding grain together. One will be taken, one will be left. See, I believe the reason, everybody always gets into the focus on the grain, the grinding grain. Oh, they really say that? Or, the men in the field. I think he's just saying that men and women are going to be going, So be prepared. He said, so be on your guard. You don't know when your Lord will come. Homeowners never know when a thief is coming. They always are on guard to keep one from breaking in. But Jesus said, always be ready. He said, you do not know when the Son of Man will come. And see, even Peter in 2 Peter goes on talking about this, that, people in this day, in the end times, that they would say, hey, it has been 2,000 years. Where is he? You know what I mean? Where's Jesus? Oh, we don't, I was just some old story. The fact is, dude, I'm telling you, you wouldn't believe the stuff that's happened in the last 4 years of my life. It's unexplainable, man. What faith in God, and knowing that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, and when God really starts working in your life, you know what I mean? But he said that who are faithful and wise servants? Who are the ones the master will put in charge of giving the others servants their food supplies at the proper time? Servants are fortunate if their master comes and find them doing their job. And I'm just trying to say, a lot of people don't even think about it, but in the book of Revelation, when Jesus coming back on that horse, bro, you know what I mean? Got the army with him. They tossed Antichrist and the false prophet, in hell, in the lake of fire. He is wearing a robe dripping with blood. You know what I mean? Or, drenched in blood. I can't remember exactly how this phrase has been so long since I read. I think it's Revelation chapter 19. And, that's something we got to think about, dude. He was already, as he was coming down, already, don't get me wrong. Jesus, that's what he said he had to do. He had to come to serve. I mean, he even got down and washed his disciples' feet, man. You tell me one pastor or one, all these, Christian content creators, all these, all this money they got. All right, get down even, washing his disciples' feet, bro. No, they won't do it for a show, man. But that's what I'm trying to say is for real. And that's what I'm trying to say too, is that all these people, you imagine if all the rich Christian, especially the content creators, mega pastors, all these churches that were supposed to be, tithing and all this, donations so they will help people. I mean, why is there still world hunger? I mean, why are orphanages as bad as they are? You know what I mean? Why are we not taking care of widows? And, it just, I'm trying to say, man, I feel like there's so much more that we could do. I mean, we'd rather give old food out of a food drive, you know what I mean? And go to a benevolent center, they'll help you a little bit on their power bill. Man, you know what I'm paying for power just in this town? I'm telling you, man, I don't mind asking for help. And one time I did. I was very prideful. Hey, what's going on, Tornado? Appreciate the comment. Because I've been poor all my life, man. You know what I mean? I don't mind going and ask for help. We call the community corrections one at that time too. I'm just like, man, they're supposed to be Christian, organizations, and that's what they're supposed to do is help people. I'm just trying to say, a lot of times, we need to drop our pride, man. You know what I mean? We got to humble ourselves, man. You can't be ashamed to ask for help. We shouldn't be. But people has put that pressure on us for where we don't want to. Coming back from our parents and their parents' parents. You know what I mean? Handed down to us this level of guilt to feel bad for asking for help. And the whole gospel itself is what it is. He said, you ask, you will receive. You knock on the door, it will be open to you. You know what I mean? You search, you will find. That's what it's about, man. He goes on to say, but suppose one of the servants thinks the master won't return until late. Right? And say, I believe this is a lot of key words in here. He says, suppose that evil servant starts beating the other servants, eats and drinks with people who are drunk. I was trying to say, just look at the church history in itself. Most of them, it was like, and if you ask me, they've pretty much kept women down for this whole time. And I'm trying to say that, everybody needs a reality check here and there, man. You know what I mean? But you can't tell me with just, I don't know, man. I ain't gonna get all that tonight, theology and, but, speaking of, what scriptures I believe, were added and wasn't. Because I'm telling you, man, these Muslims, see, a lot of people don't realize, too, one of the reasons why they're so, what they're doing is that, they're, even in Muhammad's time, 500 years after Jesus died, right? They knew that people were adding stuff to the Bible. Even John said that, man. You know what I mean? But he's also talking about them too, It's goodness sakes, But, they wouldn't have been around then. I think John, I just know around, 90 to 100 AD, or after Jesus died, somewhere in there. Is they think that, that's when he wrote the book of Revelation, and I don't know, what all went down. A lot of people believe that several different Johns wrote the Johns, but I'm telling you, dude, I have studied the book of John, 1st John, 2nd John, 3rd John, and the book of Revelation. I'm trying to tell you, dude, if I've learned anything from it, the same guy, the only one I'm questioning about is the third, the third letter from John. And I just ain't really studied it much because it really, I can't remember exactly what all it says. He's like, talking out to people. I can't remember exactly who it is neither, but the first two, man, I'm telling you, dude, and the book of John and the book of Revelation, I'm telling you, the same guy wrote that. And even the guy who started the first Bible college, you can look it up, he believed the same thing. So, something to think about, Anyways. And look, man. I mean, dude. Oh my, I ain't gonna get it. But we know how terrible, churches and, not just, we can't just look at the Roman Catholic Church. We can't just look at the Protestants and put our fingers, or, all these other branches that come off of it. And I'm just trying to say, but over throughout the centuries, man, since the last 2,000 years, it has been horrible, what they've done to each other. And, what people done to the people of the church. You know what I mean? So definitely that's how to go down, right? And he said, if that happens, the master will surely come on a day and at a time when the servant least expects it. And I'm telling you, man, I've heard preachers preach, oh man, but these certain things that happen, we ain't got to worry about. Well, what did Jesus just say? On a time when nobody would see it coming. And of course, right after what was the last year before last, we had all the rapture talk, and goodness, that's took place I don't know how many times over the last few years. Just since I've been a Christian, there might have been 2 raptures, that they said was coming. Which we know that not on a day or hour. And I'm just trying to say, I got a lot of theories on it myself. I've been studying the book of Revelation for over a year now. You can only imagine. I almost got the whole book of Revelation in contemporary English wrote down by hand. But anyways, to finish it off here, he says, the servants, the church, right, will then be punished if they're the ones that's beating and, those other servants and, drinking with drunks, It don't say people just drinking, casually. It says people who eat and drink with other people who are drunk. The Bible don't speak against drinking. It speaks against being drunk. You know what I mean? Being, where you can't control yourself, man. I think that refers to everything. You know what I mean? That make you where you couldn't. I'm so sorry. I know I freak some people out sometimes looking back. Dude, I been here in the, got my own little spot and it's kind of, got the door open. It feels pretty good. But always something seems like moving outside. But anyways, he said, that servant, that beats the others, that, parties on the money. We know how many, we've seen all the people exposed over the years, right? He said, that servant will then be punished, thrown out with the ones who only pretend to serve their master. They will cry and grit their teeth in pain. Jesus said, I believe sometimes, man, I've got all kinds of crazy theories I believe about what happens in the book of Revelation, like with the sheep and goats in general. Who knows what Jesus is going. I'm telling you, man. I know he's coming. So, that's all I got tonight. God bless everybody. Hope everybody has a great night. I appreciate everybody coming out. Appreciate the likes, guys. God bless you. Everybody comments, all our new subscribers, appreciate you. Super cool people. It seems like this has been one of the best runs I've had on the Follower of Jesus channel. This is my 3rd one. So, I appreciate the support, and y'all keep coming out. We're going to keep trying to do this. Mostly not, this is for the, the night people. I've been doing this for years, and it just seems like, where my people's at. Maybe that's where God had me work the night shift. Obviously, it was crazy when I first started working in my life outside of high school. It was a night job, my first one, so I thought it was pretty crazy. But anyways, God bless y'all. I appreciate all the comments, guys, the likes. Y'all are so cool. I'll see y'all next time. I'm out of here.